Welcome back to Gamito in the Pedroche Valley of Andalusia, Spain. It is hot all around, the dominant color is brown. The soil in most places is still very hard, so putting up fence posts is not an option at the time. And so we work on other things. Other things like heat-loving plants.
So here we have a bunch, 80 something new palovnia trees. They will be planted now as soon as possible in all the places where we know that the microclimate is good for them. And a little invention, we also have some water hose here. It is gravity fed from the big water tower. The the altitude difference is just enough to give enough pressure. Produces some gentle rain here for these. And this is also the beginning, and finally we are getting to it, of our nursery. Because all that will be reorganized soon, and then we can get started with tagasaste seeds that I have for a while. And all these things, they want sunlight, maybe some shade, so we can make an area that gets more shade while other parts are in full sun. And then we can start growing our own plants for planting out in the wild, so to say. So this is the beginning of that. We have not grazed here yet, but likely tomorrow it will happen. The idea was to keep it standing for as long as possible, sensible, and it is looking good. There is some greenish stuff in between. It might be something that is forage, or it might be some sizzles, but it does look like it were forage. So if I zoom in, and further down there, so this is living plants. It's not only grasses that have gone to seed and now go dormant until there is more moisture available. And of course we will strip graze this, so there will be a single strand of polywire and a human supervising this in order to protect the freshly planted things, which are there in the back. And as you can see, it is green there. And I will go there next to have a closer look. This is also very interesting. So definitely there are plants like these flowers there that continue to grow. Also we are now definitely in summer and it's hot, and there has been no rain since we planted the Sudan grass. And if I pan across, you can also see, actually let me walk up to the fence so that it's not in the way, that the sun hemp, the Crotularia huncea, is also growing. Of course it's a heat-loving plant, that was the whole point, but it definitely is growing, and there is no rain coming from the sky, but we have those features like the new trench that we have there, the new irrigation channel, and of course over there we have the big swale where the palovnias are, and all that somehow keeps that moisture here. But yes, I have to admit, we are pumping water into these things so that this whole area across gets somehow some additional moisture that the rain, which is not present, does not provide. Of course we don't intend to do this for all eternity. This is just to get the system going, and I hope the more we advance with our approach and we have more soil covered and a lot of living roots all the time, then all those leaves that all these plants have will be able to catch enough moisture from the air, that is what happens in the Mediterranean, so that they can stay alive also it is hot. And of course we need to add a lot more trees, so that there is a lot more ecosystem present than it is right now. it is way too open. Dehesa is an open forest, but I believe this is not sustainable when it is that open as it is. So all there should be at least the same amount of trees again. And that's a lot of trees. This here is the beginning of the big swale in CT1. That is one of the two ponds. This one is the shallower one. And as you can see, there is something new. This morning this vetiver got planted. And the idea is that it should use the existing water and later on the resident moisture to grow over the summer. And later, when this fills up again, the vetiver does not mind to be wet. After all, it's a swamp plant, so it should like it. And over time, this will then also provide some shade for the water that we catch in this swale. So the idea is to plant it left and right of the swale, so that there are living roots, and later on this will also then be useful for mulch, which gets put on the berm here when we start to have a garden there. I should not forget to mention that the design that I have in mind is also to have 2 or 3 or maybe 4 rows of vetiver below that berm. But we don't have any irrigation here at the moment, so we start there where it's moist, and then later on, when we have a pipe that runs here, has to do also with that garden, on top of the berm, then we can establish those rows of vetiver below the berm over summer, when it needs some water to establish itself. Once the roots are long enough, they will definitely be able to reach the water that the swale provides. But for establishing it, we definitely need to help out a little bit, maybe just one season. This is how our experiment with corn, sunflowers and alfalfa looks like. You see here in the front, there is not a lot of green. Somehow it did not germinate well in this area. But the areas further down, there we have a lot of new plants, a lot of new green. So that is very positive. So this is not a total failure. And I hope that there is enough resident moisture and a little bit of additional supply from the moisture that is still stored in the swale, that this will grow tall. So I think here we have sunflower and the corn and some sunflowers again. And there in between, I would think that is the alfalfa. As long as that is also growing, everything is okay. This here is the area right below the pond, the area where the backhoe got stuck. So this definitely has a lot more moisture. But interestingly, down there, which is quite far away, it's also looking very lush. But that is the area that gets some shade and where we made compost. So that might be related. And we also do have some natural grasses that were here before. So it's not our monoculture or culture of 3 that we have here. The seed bank is also participating. And that is the water level that we have here in our integrated pond. It is definitely lower, so you can see the step here. It is way below that, but there is still a lot of water, and we will see for how long that will last us. So as long as that is there, I believe the area to the right, below, will not dry out, and therefore the plants that we seeded there will continue to grow. And if we're running very, very low, we still have the option to pump, because the water line is right there at the very end. not visible, maybe a little bit if you look very closely, and I won't let the camera shake too much. But there is a water pipe, and it's the same one that we use to pump the water up into that swale, and also the irrigation channel that we recently created. And now that I'm here, I can also show you a little bit how the sun hemp in this area below the other swale is coming up. And as you can see there below the tree, also the seed bank provided plants, they are also growing. So this is also some sort of early summer forage. And it's from seed that we already had. We did not buy them. The bovine family, since, well, about midday, is there in this zone. It looks a little bit greenish, and it definitely is, because under the tree there's always a lot of shade and better growth. And I'm pretty sure that there's also Synodondactylon, the Bermuda grass. Sorry for the wind, a lot of sawmills are going off. And here in front, this is this platform. This platform will soon become a place to give them water, and also for pigs to give them feed. That is a new thing that we are starting now, step by step. And you can see there at the edge, that is definitely some green. That is also the Bermuda grass, like last year. Let's see how much green we will have. The more Bermuda grass, the greener it is in summer. That is one of the objectives. I might have said this before, an excavator is essential for agriculture. So here we loosened up the soil by digging, and as you can see, we created a little bit of chaos on purpose so that we can plant more palovnia trees here in this area. We learned the hard way that all this compacted soil will just create a hole where the water stands, and then the roots of those young trees will rot, and then they will die, and we achieved nothing. So this time we decided to move this earth, and soil horizons and all that do not matter in this particular case, just in this particular case, because we want to set the trees and make sure that we won't drown them in water. We learned that on the berms they grow a lot better than in all the other places where we tried it. So this is now our attempt to establish a few of them here, and it will be a few. So behind that yurt there is the same thing, and tomorrow they will be set and we will have some irrigation here, and then we will see if we can manage to get them to grow the same way as they do in the CT2 swale and berm, because we want to have some shade here and some biomass. So later on, when this area here becomes a big dog enclosure with an integrated pond and all the luxuries, there should be shade. And if it works here, where we can see it every day, then we can replicate this idea in all the other places where it has been difficult. Those trees are a little bit special. They have some requirements. The cold is one of the other issues, but that can also be mitigated. We will see how we do this in B1 when autumn comes around. But for the moment, this is what we want to try. And we have a lot of trees now, and we want to get them into the ground so that they can do their thing and help us with the regeneration. This water pipe here, which is baking in the sun, will also be buried in the trench that you can see there ahead. In here we will also bury some pipe for electrical cables together with the water pipe. Of course, the electrical cables will be in one pipe and the water pipe is next to it, so they are protected from each other. This has been a long overdue project. Now we have a water pipe connected directly to the water tower, and that helps to have some cool water during summer. Because if you have these pipes around here laying in the sun, you have boiling hot water and you cannot use it for anything. This morning we got a delivery of sand so that we can close up the trench. So this is supposed to turn into a little forest. So we put them a little bit denser, and if it's too dense we can remove them later on, but hopefully some will establish themselves here and not like last time all die. Tomorrow the bovine family will enter this paddock here, and before this gets prepared, so there will be 2 square bales of straw, and we will distribute a little bit, not in small packages, here in this area that you see, so that this gets more a cover, and they will eat and manure all around it. And we do this in order to achieve what you will be seeing next. That is what we have been left with after having the pigs and cows here multiple times. This, I think, is just perfect. We do have a lot of soil covered with organic material that will later, when the rain comes back, then break down and turn into soil. And this is a great joy to see. I'm very happy that we have this here. And this place here has now 12 days of not being grazed. You can still see actually down here a little bit the color of the urine that a cow left here. So this different color there tells that story, even it's after 12 days. And it will stay without animal for the duration until 36 days. And then they will come back. And in order to not remove the cover, we will add some straw here in the few spots like this one here in front that are not covered, so that they eat the straw and leave the other cover alone because it's on the ground anyway. So they will trample it and hopefully with their hooves also cut it a little bit in smaller pieces so that it will decompose later much better when the rain comes back. So I'm extremely happy that we have achieved this, and our goal, so to say, is now to have all the places look like that after the summer grazing. And I think with the help of the pigs and the cows, we can definitely achieve this. It looks feasible. And one more word. Some of you have been talking about daikon radish. And yes, we just talked about that. So the idea is, when the rain comes back and the conditions are favorable, we will then have the cows in here, and while they are present, we will distribute the seed of the daikon radish so that it can develop over the rainy part of the year. And then later the cows can graze the leaves of the daikon radish, and when that is done, we can then bring in the pigs so that they can uproot it and have a feast. And now we are getting into that cycle that we use the different animals, seed with their help, and also then let them forage on what they helped to establish. And if we do this frequently, then this is going to be our production model. So I'm very looking forward to that. Oh, and one more thing to mention. Now that we have water in the place that we want to use as a nursery, we can now definitely also start with the tagasaste plants. I have a bag of 100-something seeds. That of course is not enough, but this was to see how I can obtain these seeds. They came from South Africa, and I was a little bit worried that maybe Spain will not let them in or something like that. Can happen. But no problem. So now I have a little bit more than 100 seeds, and they will end up in the little pots. And then the idea is, when they are old enough to be planted outside, then we will plant them on both sides of this fence with a little bit distance, so that on the inner side we can cut it manually, and on the outer side we can leave this job to the animal because it's forage for them. So we will have a green line along the fence. And in summer, and the tagasaste has a taproot, which means it will be able over time to reach the water table and stay alive and grow during summer. So this will be also a huge achievement once we get this working. So this here is the next place where we want to plant the paulovnias. The guys took the backhoe here and dug a little bit. This is not to make a trench, this is to make it loose. So in each of these places they put in the bucket and emptied it in the same place again, and that is where we will plant a tree. And we will do this along this berm all the way to the end, to create a similar situation like we have in the other swale, where they are already pretty tall. We now have learned that when the soil is loose, this goes better, and obviously that is what makes sense. And so now we use this to establish those palovnia trees. This is the place where we seeded a lot into straw, and where we have those trenches up there at the slope, and where the rye is in. And at the bottom of this, we do have a little mud hole, so to say. It's actually not a mud hole. It has clay at the bottom, which is why the water stays there. And it's part of this little swale here. This swale has done its job so far, but of course it's not a miracle swale. So we will have those palovnias at the bottom of it. And we pump water into it now. We have not started, but tomorrow it's prepared. There is a pipe. And that should help the palovnias to establish themselves. And that way we create a new system up here. And if you look further down, you will see something green there. And that green is the Sudan grass. And this should then also take advantage of the additional moisture. But we do have a plan sometime next week to add an irrigation channel on top of the Sudan grass, just to make sure that it really grows and not stays very small, because I am afraid that being small might prolong the problem with the prussic acid in it. So we said we will wait for grazing until it has 80 centimeters in height, and if there's not enough moisture it won't reach it. So we better give it some help to make sure that all the parameters are right. This is also pretty cool that we have a new plant in there. So wherever we have that standing water, sooner or later some volunteers will show up. And of course also here we will plant vetiver going forward. So all those places where we have a trench or a swale, some body of water for a while, there we will plant vetiver. So this whole place will be filled with vetiver in all those places, and then going forward more, there will be more vetiver in certain places around the trees, on contour lines and all that. We use it as a tool to somehow retain moisture and maybe even raise the water table as a consequence.